I almost didn't come here. I had been through Singapore, Kuala Lumpur, Bangkok, Bali, and Ho Chi Minh City. I had done Southeast Asia the way most people do at the airports everyone's heard of, the temples everyone photographs, the beaches everyone's already posted. And when a friend mentioned Borneo, I nodded and quietly moved it to the bottom of the list. A jungle detour. A side trip for serious naturalists. Not a place that would change the way I think about what travel is actually for. I was embarrassingly wrong. And I know what you're thinking right now. Borneo is that place with orangutans and palm oil, right? It's somewhere remote. Remote and far and not quite on the itinerary. That's exactly what I thought. That assumption is exactly what this video is going to dismantle. Because Borneo, specifically Malaysian Borneo, the states of Sabah and Sarawak, is not a detour. It is the destination that every other destination in Asia is being quietly measured against, by the people who've actually been here. Let me show you what I mean. The Amazon rainforest is 55 million years old. That number sounds ancient. Until you land in Sabah and someone tells you that the rainforest here, the one you are standing at the edge of, is 140 million years old. That is older than the Amazon by nearly 100 million years. This is not a young jungle that grew up after something else died. This is the oldest continuously living rainforest on Earth. UNESCO recognized Kinabalu Park as a World Heritage Site. The WWF has described Borneo as one of the world's most biodiverse regions on land. But the numbers don't prepare you for what standing inside it actually feels like. James is a biology teacher from Bristol. He'd been to Costa Rica. He'd done the cloud forests of Ecuador. He arrived in Danum Valley in eastern Sabah with the polite enthusiasm of someone who expects to be impressed by a really good nature documentary. He booked 3 nights. On his second morning, he was walking the canopy boardwalk when a Bornean orangutan appeared in the trees above him. Not behind glass. Not on a tour vehicle 50 meters away. In the trees. 40 feet above his head, looking directly at him with an expression he described as, and I'm quoting him exactly here, like it had already decided I wasn't worth the trouble. He sat down on the platform and didn't move for 20 minutes. When he came back to his lodge that afternoon, he asked the front desk about wildlife conservation programs in the area. He went home, enrolled in a course, and is now completing a graduate degree in conservation ecology. He'd been planning to retire from teaching in 3 years. Those plans are gone. Borneo does something to people. I don't think I fully understood that until it did something to me, because the rainforest is just the frame. What lives inside it belongs to a category of animal experience most travelers never encounter. There is an elephant that lives only in Borneo. The Bornean pygmy elephant, the smallest subspecies of Asian elephant on Earth, and based on DNA analysis, they have been isolated on this island for approximately 300,000 years. 300,000 years of separation from every other elephant population on Earth has produced an animal that is behaviorally distinct in ways scientists are still trying to understand. They are unusually calm. They show complex social bonding that researchers describe as exceptional even by elephant standards. And they live along one river in the world, the Kinabatangan, in Sabah. Priya is a wildlife photographer based in Delhi. She has shot elephants in Sri Lanka and Kenya. In Amboseli. She knew how to be around elephants, or thought she did. She booked a river boat at dawn along the Kinabatangan, a narrow, dark river that moves silently through secondary jungle, and was told that sightings were common but never guaranteed. 20 minutes upriver, a family group came to the bank to drink. 3 adults, 2 sub-adults, and a calf that kept stumbling in the shallows and being steadied by its mother's trunk. Priya was 15 feet from the bank. On a quiet boat. In near total silence except for the hornbills. She told me it was the only time she had cried while shooting. She goes back every wet season. Kenya's Masai Mara is one of the greatest wildlife spectacles on Earth. I will not argue against that. But in the Mara, you are inside a land cruiser, you are part of a convoy of 12 other vehicles, and the animals know exactly what you are and what you represent. At the Kinabatangan, there is no convoy. There is the river, there is the mist, there is a silence so complete at 5 a.m. that you can hear the breathing of the trees, and then if you are paying attention there is a family of elephants deciding whether the river is warm enough to step into. These are two completely different things. But the wildlife is only part of what this island is holding. There is something else here, something that makes me genuinely frustrated that nobody is talking about it, and that is the culture. There are over 40 distinct indigenous ethnic groups in Malaysian Borneo. 40. Each with its own language, its own architectural tradition, its own cosmological system. The Kadazan Dusun of Sabah, the Iban of Sarawak, the Bidayu, the Kenya, the Penan. Ethnologue records over 170 languages spoken across the island of Borneo. 170. Japan, which gets more cultural travel content than almost any country on Earth, has one dominant indigenous group and one language family. Borneo has 170 languages, and you have almost certainly never heard a single story about any of them. Amir is a journalist from Kuala Lumpur. He grew up speaking Malay and English, has a postgraduate degree in international affairs, and considers himself a well-traveled Malaysian. He visited a Bidayu longhouse village in Sarawak for the first time at the age of 34. He told me, without embarrassment, that he knew more about the feudal social structures of Edo period Japan than he knew about the culture of people living 250 kilometers from his birthplace, people whose ancestors had been building and governing and trading and fighting on this island for 3,000 years. He now covers indigenous affairs for a major regional publication. He says it is the most important work he has done. Japan's cultural depth is extraordinary, and it is also extraordinarily documented. Thousands of YouTube videos, hundreds of books, an entire global industry of people explaining it. The indigenous cultures of Borneo are equally ancient, equally structured, equally extraordinary, and they exist in a near-total media vacuum. If you think the world deserves to know this island exists, that these cultures exist, subscribe right now. We are building a channel that shows Southeast Asia the way it actually is, not the way it looks in a tourist brochure. Hit the button. Help us reach the people who need to see this. Now, I want to talk about something that has genuinely bothered me. There is a story told about Borneo in Western media. You have probably encountered it. Palm oil. Deforestation. Extinction. The burning. The tragedy. That narrative exists, and parts of it are real. I am not dismissing the environmental pressures this island faces. But here is what that narrative systematically omits, and I want you to think about who benefits from the omission. The deforestation story positions Western audiences as morally concerned witnesses to a distant disaster. It makes for excellent engagement. It requires no complexity. And it completely erases the agency of the people who live here, the Bornean governments, the indigenous communities, the conservation organizations that are actively fighting back, because a story about people winning is much harder to monetize than a story about people losing. Here are some facts that story never tells you. Sabah has designated over 3 million hectares as protected forest, covering more than 50% of the state's total land area. That is not a developing world conservation program. That is one of the largest proportional protection commitments of any subnational government on Earth. The Heart of Borneo initiative, led jointly by Malaysia, Indonesia, and Brunei in partnership with WWF, now protects a continuous transboundary forest block of 220,000 square kilometers, one of the last great connected equatorial rainforest ecosystems remaining anywhere on the planet. Ecotourism revenue in Sabah is going directly into indigenous-led conservation programs. The communities living alongside the wildlife are the ones protecting it, and they are doing it better than almost any equivalent model in the world. The destruction narrative isn't a lie. It is a deliberate selection of facts that produces a particular emotional response in a particular audience, while erasing what the people on the ground are actually building. Borneo does not need your pity. It needs your attention. And if you give it your attention, you are going to discover something that surprised me more than the rainforest and more than the elephants. Kota Kinabalu, the capital of Sabah, connects to 14 international cities by direct flight. The city's average broadband speeds rank higher than London in the Ookla Speedtest Global Index. There is a specialty coffee scene here. There is street food at a level that would make food writers in New York feel provincial. And on Sunday morning at the Gaya Street Market, you can stand in a space where Chinese, Malay, Kadazan, and Filipino vendors are all selling within 20 meters of each other. The smell of Sinalao Baka's Kadazan smoked wild boar mixing with the steam from dim sum carts, and the sound of 4 languages happening simultaneously in a city that most people outside Malaysia couldn't place on a map. Sarah is a remote worker from Toronto. She came for 3 months expecting to rough it. She is still here. She has gigabit fiber in her apartment. She has a Grab delivery ecosystem that she says functions better than anything in Canada. She has a view of the South China Sea. And she has a 20-minute drive to a primary jungle where proboscis monkeys move through the canopy at dusk. She says she keeps meaning to go back to Toronto. She keeps not going. Bali is what Southeast Asia sold to the world as the adventure destination. It has done that job beautifully. But Bali is now receiving over 6 million visitors per year, and its infrastructure, its roads, its water table, its reef systems, its cultural sites is straining visibly under that volume. Sabah receives under 4 million visitors annually. It is investing that revenue into conservation programs, not consumption infrastructure. It is growing carefully, on purpose, in a direction that the people who live there have decided. That is a different kind of story. I have stood in the Forbidden City. I have watched dawn come up over Angkor Wat. I have eaten in the night markets of Taipei at 2 a.m. I have had the kinds of travel experiences that people write essays about. And I can tell you with complete sincerity that none of them prepared me for what I felt standing at the edge of the Danum Valley at sunrise. 438 square kilometers of primary rainforest, no roads, no resort infrastructure, no ambient noise except the jungle doing what the jungle has been doing for 140 million years. It is the oldest thing I have ever stood next to. And it is still here. This is not the Malaysia most people picture. This is not what the algorithm shows you when you search for Asia travel. It is the Malaysia that was here before anyone arrived to photograph it, and it is, by almost any measure I can apply, the most extraordinary place I have ever set foot on. If this video found you, share it. The algorithm hasn't discovered Borneo yet. You have. Help it reach the people who are ready to have their assumptions destroyed the way mine were. And now I want you to settle something in the comments. Is Borneo the most underrated destination on Earth right now, or do you think there's somewhere else that's been hidden even better? I want your answer. I read every one.